What's up, YouTube? Investing Aliens. Hope you guys are doing great. I've got a quick one here today. I want to break down the market really quick. We're going to talk about one small cap stock here, Rocket Lab, that could be an opportunity. So I'm going to break it down. I'm going to show you a few highlights. We'll look at fundamentals. We'll look at a chart. We'll look at some technical analysis, and I'll give you my overall thoughts and commentary on Rocket Lab. If you've been following Fired Up Wealth for a while, we've talked a lot about secular growth trends and trying to get ahead of those trends and trying to invest in opportunities where we can ride these mega trends and capture profits on the way. So if that sounds interesting to you and it's down your alley, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that bell for notifications. And we do have some very exciting news that will be dropping here very soon. Only a couple people know about this, but trust me, it's gonna be big. We'll call it Fired Up Wealth version 5.0 because we are going on our 5th year. So definitely make sure you subscribe, have that bell clicked for notifications, and stay tuned. All right, so as you know by now, markets had some pressure first few days of 2024, but remember, we had a historic 2023. We did have a bit of a comeback yesterday. NASDAQ was up nicely, I think over 2%. Today, we're basically flat in the NASDAQ, up green slightly. S&P is down 0.23. The Dow Jones is actually down about 0.5%. Now, that Russell 2K is down the most, of course, closer to 1%. The VIX is still ridiculously low. It's under 13 at 12.84, actually down 1.83% today. That 10-year Treasury is just hovering above 4%. Of course, we had a spike here recently and it's come down. As you see Treasury yields go lower, you're going to see risk on. You're going to see assets, especially growth stocks, generally going to go higher as the 10-year Treasury, the Treasury yields in general go down. Oil, you're hovering about $72 right now, so it's up 2%. Now, this at one point was in the 60s, but if you go back a year or so ago, it was much higher, so still in good shape there. And Bitcoin's hovering around 46,700. Of course, we're waiting here on the news. We've got a spot ETF, so Bitcoin hovers a 21-month high ahead of spot ETF decision by SEC. So just looking at the QQQ year to date, we're basically flat on the Qs. This is the NASDAQ 100 ETF. We're flat basically on the year at $405.40. Now that 52-week low was $268.97. The 52-week high, about $413. And of course, we have earnings season just around the corner, really starting today. You've got a few companies reporting here this morning and after the bell, but it's really going to start to pick up. You can see names like Taiwan Semiconductor. I see, Tesla, ASML, Lam Research here, Netflix. Then you've got SoFi here on the 29th. See Apple and Meta here on the 1st of February. So earnings season, it seems like it just got over. We're back into another one. Of course, the big news this week is going to be CPI. So you're going to get the Consumer Price Index. That's going to be on Thursday, and then the PPI on Friday. So of course, if inflation comes in hot, you could see the market sell off. If inflation comes in a little bit light, comes in dovish, you could see a bit of a rally. So all eyes on the 11th here, Consumer Price Index CPI for December. Again, lagging data. This is at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. All right, so we talk about secular growth trends and getting ahead of those mega trends. One of those, without question, is going to be space exploration. Now, at first glance, when you think of space, you might get excited about something like space tourism. Now, the community has spent a lot of time on this. I give credit to a handful of names, Derek, Stewart, and others, really digging into this industry and giving us better insight into what's happening and what the opportunity is longer term. So of course you think of SpaceX first. That's obviously not a publicly traded company, so you can't just go out to Fidelity right now and buy the stock. Of course, that would be the most popular one. When you think of the overall trend, and we talk about, low orbit satellite broadband internet. So you think of SpaceX, Starlink, Project Kuiper from Amazon, and that expanding to different parts of the globe and making internet access more readily available to places that aren't available now. If you think of a place like, for example, just Peru, it's very mountainous. It's going to be very hard to build fiber optic infrastructure. So as we get access to more of these broadband satellites and competition heats up, and we've done a whole video on this on the channel, an exclusive that talks about space and space exploration. It really dives deep into some of these numbers. You can check that out. You go to patreon.com/firedupwealth. Check out the 2023 conference videos, and you can go watch that video for free and all those videos for free. There's a 7-day free trial that's going on right now that's going to end soon. But just for the purpose of this video, I want to cover some highlights here and just give you a quick update on Rocket Lab. If you've been in the community for a while, you know about this company. So the space market, for example, has grown approximately 447 billion, up from 280 billion in 2010, and could grow to $1 trillion by 2030. So if you think that right now it's under 500 billion and it's essentially going to double here in the next 6 years, that seems like a pretty strong opportunity. What are some stocks that we can invest in that could potentially help us capture some of this growth and these gains? So one that might not seem obvious, like we mentioned, SpaceX would be the obvious one, is it's a small company. This is Rocket Lab, small cap, $2.7 billion. We've talked about on the channel several different times. We did a video last year and we were liking this, especially when it got down in the $4 range in that price target. Now later we'll look at a chart and we'll give you an update on that information. But just really quick, looking at this at a glance. Small cap stock, industrial, it's not profitable, doesn't have a PE ratio. This is going to be a spec stock, but I do think it's an opportunity, especially for long-term investors. And Fired Up Wealth, we've really put a date on this for 2030 and beyond. So if you're holding something like Rocket Lab, it would be spec, a small position in your portfolio, and you're really targeting 2030 and beyond. So that might not be for everybody, but that's just what we recommend. Now, of course, trading momentum could make a name like this rip and go much higher. You could make a lot of money trading or swing trading. We're really going to be focused on holding something like this, monitoring it, hoping that it grows into what we think that it can be. Now, before we go into valuation metrics and look at a chart, let's just do a quick overview in case some of you are new to this company. What's Rocket Lab all about? So Rocket Lab is an end-to-end space company delivering reliable launch services, spacecraft, satellite components, and on-orbit management. So the key here is end-to-end, and this wasn't always the case. Now, this is a deck from Rocket Lab directly from Investor Relations back in November. So 2 successful launches in Q3, and you can see on the screen what those are. So if you've been following this stock, you know that it had some momentum, and that momentum, the air came out of that balloon essentially when this happened here. So September launch failure, likely caused by electrical arc. Now, it is important to note here that nobody was harmed. No people are actually on board when you think of Electron mission. So obviously that's the big positive, because if you're a Gen Xer like me, you probably can think back to the awful times when we were kids with Challenger. When we think of space exploration today, it's a lot different, especially when you're talking about companies like this and even SpaceX. I mean, a lot of what we're doing is we're taking satellites and we're putting them up into orbit. When you think of space travel today, of course, you can think about Virgin Galactic and space tourism. But really, when you think about where the money is, it's going to be in something like this. You know, SpaceX, and you think of Rocket Lab, they're essentially taking satellites, they're putting them into orbit for many different reasons that we're going to need these satellites for in the future. Now, of course, there are other aspirations like Elon Musk wanting to go to Mars and, you know, tons of other exciting things that we can talk about. But when we think about the low-hanging fruit in terms of how we can make money as investors, as a business that's trying to, you know, get to profitability at some point, this would fit in that very well. You think of Virgin Galactic, I do like the idea of space tourism, but that's a very different animal. You're convincing people to pay, you know, $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever the price tag is to go up and get an experience that's really not, I mean, you're not really in space or anything for very long. And, you know the whole story is Blue Origin and a whole rabbit hole we can go down. And it's pretty cool, obviously. It's kind of like bragging rights. Hey, I did this and you didn't. It's very expensive. I think there's certainly a market for it, but for me as an investor, this makes more sense. And I know this is something that Derek and other people in the community have talked about for a while. And as you think about it and you start researching these companies, it really does make a lot of sense. So I wish companies like Virgin Galactic well, but when I think of where can I invest my money in space exploration, this is one that really sticks out to me. And there are a few others. They're of course going to be speculative type names. So Rocket Lab's investigation into the anomaly that occurred during its 41st Electron launch is extensive. And that's what we just talked about. It goes into a lot of data on here. You can go check this out if you're interested. What I wanted to cover really quick before we get into some of the financials. So this is the 22 missions booked in 2024. And of course, this deck is from November, so it's going to grow. Right now, we've got 5 launches in Q1. So that's the quarter we're in. We've got 6 launches in Q2. We've got 3 in Q3 and 8 launches in Q4. So this is pretty big, right? 8 launches in Q4. And it'd be interesting to see if we can get this number maybe even to 12. So speaking of that, Rocket Lab gives details on $515 million December contract, sets 2024 first mission launch window. This is just from January 8th. This is hot off the presses. So of course I went into Discord. This was just a few minutes ago and Derek's already replied to me. So thanks, Derek. I appreciate the idea for the day. He's like, hey, you should give us an update on Rocket Lab. Great idea. Here we are. In your eyes, why is this news so big for shareholders? And that's the headline I just read. Rocket Lab gives details on $515 million December contract, sets 2024 for first mission launch window. So Derek's response here, at the end of Q3, Rocket Lab had just over $500 million in backlog. So $500 million in backlog on the books while still bringing in money from launches and their more lucrative business in space systems. With the $515 million contract awarded to Rocket Lab, not only doubles their backlog, but that contract is serious money at this stage in Rocket Lab's journey. That makes sense, right? So Rocket Lab is a $2.67 billion market cap, and this contract is a fifth of their market cap. This is huge. Not only that, but Rocket Lab should be cash flow positive either this year or next year. Neutron is still around the corner. Here are some slides from Q3 earnings. And of course, there are a ton of slides and more information down here. And Discord is always bumping with all kinds of information, lots of collaboration and discussions like this. So definitely join us, join the conversation. You definitely will not regret it. And there's a free trial right now for 7 days. So Derek, thanks for that again. He is our in-house EV and space nerd. We'll call him a nerd because that's a compliment on this channel. But really, he's kind of Elon Musk fanboy. We give him a hard time, but he definitely keeps us up to speed with Tesla, with SpaceX, with Elon Musk, companies like Rocket Lab. So thanks for all your efforts, and the community does appreciate it. All right, so 1 year, we've got 29.27%. In 5 years, this stock doesn't have any history because it just started trading basically in August of 2021. Now, of course, the stock at one point was much higher, like anything in 2021 for the most part. And so you have to decide, when does it make sense to buy some of these names again? Now, I do own Rocket Lab in both portfolios, so the primary as well as the community portfolio, and the cost basis is a little better than where we're at right now. But I do think that this could be an opportunity, especially for longer term investors. So let me go on. Now, of course, again, spec stock, not profitable. You just heard some data from Derek though of what could happen here. And you have to look at what's going on. Now, anytime you look at a metric like a PE, which this doesn't have, or a price to sales, that's going to be lagging data. So now we have new information about this new contract, which is really going to, flip the switch a little bit. So if you look at EV sales, 10.53, price to sales, 11.23. Well, you can do the math and factor in this new contract, and that's going to bring that number down. So really, if you think about it, if people were okay paying $5 or $6 a share before the contract, they shouldn't have any problems paying $5 or $6 with this new information. Now, I'm not saying that that's a slam dunk at $5 or $6, and some people would look at this and say it's absolutely insane. Most of us were targeting this in the fours and really trying to nibble dollar cost average, thinking very long term with really the mindset, if it goes lower, we want to buy more. Now, the growth on this isn't astronomical either for the valuation. It's at 26.59%. Seeking Alpha here ranks this as an A-. That revenue forward growth at 90%. So you can see that's going to start growing here, and that's a huge positive. And of course, you look at profitability, D- here. So you're going to have negative numbers, not profitable. It does have positive, about 16% gross profit margin, but net income per employee, they're still in growth stage. They're a spec stock, losing $121,000 per employee. So we just talked about it. Not free cash flow positive, but working towards that. But these kind of stocks, they're not going to be fashionable, not when there's economic uncertainty. And so this could be an opportunity longer term. But of course, if you're a value investor, this is not going to be your huckleberry. Now, if you look at momentum, of course, if you're a long-term investor, this isn't really going to be your main focus, but it does give you a better idea of if you're trying to buy it when you think of dollar cost averaging. So we look at things like momentum. We look at technical analysis. We're using fundamentals first for 99% of the puzzle. We're using things like this as that last 1%. Now, if you look at the 3-month performance, it's up 23%, 6 months, negative 3%. This is one that did have some momentum. It got that momentum stalled out here when we had the bad news in September, the end of 2023. And that always takes some time to kind of flush itself out with investors. So now if you have, earnings coming up, you've got, a successful launch or two, you could see some excitement come back into this. You generally want to buy against the grain and buy it before everybody else is buying it. And we do have earnings according to Fidelity coming up here on March 1st. So keep that in mind. As I mentioned earlier, these are never a reason to buy a stock, but I do think it's good just to get an idea just for awareness of where these price targets are from analysts. So the highest price target here is here's $10. This is on tip ranks. Average price target, $7.46. Lowest is $5.25. And you're trading at $5.45 right now. Now, of course, these are 12-month price targets, and they don't mean anything because they're wrong all the time. But according to the analysts that cover this, you've got 7, you've got 5 buy ratings, 2 hold, and you've got an upside of 37% when you look at the average. Looking at the technical analysis, the relative strength index, the RSI, we're sitting at about 59 right now. So that's going to be neutral. And then looking at chart here, so anytime you see orange, that's a previous chart day. We do chart day every single Wednesday live in Patreon Discord. Again, join us. 7-day free trial expiring soon. And again, we use technical analysis as long-term investors to try to get better entry and exit points. And really for DCAing, it's not for trading, not for day trading, not for swing trading. So we're looking at, yearly charts, daily candles, just trying to look at overall trends. So you can see previous chart days, we talked about 550 on the last video. I did a video whenever that was last time we talked about RKLB. Prefer $4, was even in the 3s in pre-market. So this got down in the high 3s at one point pre-market when this bad news happened. And then it traded in the 4s for a little while, consolidated. Now it's back at around 550 a share. So in yellow here, that's today's information. I'd love to see it pull back again. Of course, 550 today is much better than paying $8. And that's, if you look at this was July. And of course, we had kind of a top in growth and everything sold off. If the market remains bullish, especially if the Fed starts cutting rates, you could see stocks like this go back to levels like that, and you could see it $8 plus. And of course, if you have fundamentals getting stronger at the same time as trading momentum, well, that can be a perfect storm, and crazy things could happen both directions. The R3 on this is 714, so these are resistance numbers you're going to see on the way up. So really, it's going to have some resistance around $6.50, and then closer to $7.15. On the downside, of course, the trend line here is going to be closer to $4. And, this is a great area if it does pull back, like let's just say CPI is really bad and you get a big sell-off. This is a good area to look at. We generally like to buy closer to trend or even under the trend. So, if you could get this in the 4s, 475, down in 354 is unlikely, but it's a possibility. This is the S3. So really, I would say if you're bullish on the stock and you have the right mindset, you're thinking about dollar cost averaging, 20-30 horizon, right in this area to me isn't a terrible area for an entry point. It certainly can go much lower. It's spec. We talk about spec being 10x or 0. So obviously don't go too heavy on names like this, but you would buy a little bit here. And then, of course, if it goes lower, you DCA in these different levels. I think this level is unlikely, but certainly possible. And this is the area that if it did come in, it would be even more attractive, of course. So obviously, guys, you're looking at, the stock market right now. And especially if you're a new investor, if you didn't invest, back in the lows of 2023, you're looking at all these names saying, well, everything is way higher. I only want to pay those low prices again. Well, it's possible that happens, but there's also a good chance that doesn't happen. And so you have to decide, and we talk about build that blueprint, the portfolio, the plan of what you're trying to accomplish. If this fits into your plan as one of your spec plays, this could be a good opportunity, but you'd have to have the right mindset, knowing that this stock is one that could be extremely volatile, have a lot of beta. It can rip and go 10% higher in a day. It could drop 10% in a day, and so on. I do own this stock. It's speculative. It's managed to a small position in both accounts, and I plan on holding it for at least 5 years and continuing to monitor it. Of course, if the story changes, then you sell the stock. At this point, the story hasn't changed. There's been a lot of positives, even with the negative we had. That's something that you expect to happen with any kind of progression. It's just going to happen, right? So obviously you don't want it to happen, but at the same time, it's not surprising. Anytime you have new technology, you're pushing the boundaries, you're doing new things, you're going to have things that are going to happen. So again, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click that bell for notifications. If you like videos like this short recaps, make sure you watch the video and drop a like and comment. I'll do more of these. I appreciate your time and attention. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.